Chapter 5 Katorn. I arose at last and dressed myself in a simple tunic, having been washed and shaved, much to my embarrassment, by my slaves. I went by myself into the weapons rooms, and there took down my sword from where it hung in its scabbard on a peg. I unsheathed the blade, and again a sort of exultation filled me. Immediately I forgot my qualms and scruples and laughed as the sword whistled around my head and my muscles flexed with the weight of it. I feinted the sword, and it seemed that it was part of my very body, that it was another limb whose presence I had been unaware of until now. I thrust it out at full reach, pulled it back, swung it down. It filled me with joy to wield it. It made me into something greater than I had ever felt I was before. It made me into a man, a warrior, a champion. And yet, as John Dacre, I had handled swords perhaps twice in my life, and handled them most clumsily, according to those friends of mine who had considered themselves experts. At last I reluctantly sheathed the sword as I saw a slave hovering some distance away. I remembered that only I, Arakose, could hold the sword and live. "What is it?" I said. "The Lord Katorn, master. He would speak with you." I put my sword back on its peg. "Bid him enter," I told the slave. Katorn came in rapidly. He appeared to have been waiting some time, and was in no better a mood than when I had first encountered him. His boots, which seemed to be shod with metal, clattered on the flagstones of the weapons room. "Good morning to you, Lord Arakose," he said. I bowed. "Good morning, Lord Katorn. I apologize if you were made to wait. I was trying out the sword." "The sword Kanajana." Katorn looked at it speculatively. "The sword Kanajana," I said. "Would you have some refreshment, Lord Katorn?" I was making a great effort to please him, not only because it would not do to have so experienced a warrior as an enemy when plans of a battle were being prepared, but because I had, as I said, come to sympathize with his situation. But Katorn refused to be mollified. "I broke my fast at dawn," he said. "I have come to discuss more pressing matters than eating, Lord Arakose." "And what are those?" Manfully, I restrained my own temper. "Matters of war, Lord Arakose. What else?" "Indeed, and what specific matters would you wish to discuss with me, Lord Katorn?" "It seems to me that we should attack the Eldrin before they come against us." "Attack being the best form of defense, eh?" He looked surprised at this. He had plainly not heard the phrase before. "Eloquently put, my lord. One would think you an Eldrin yourself with such a way with words." He was deliberately trying my temper, but I swallowed the insinuation. "So," I said, "we attack them. Where?" "That is what we shall have to discuss with all those concerned in planning this war. But it seems there is one obvious point." "And that is?" He wheeled and strode into another chamber, returning with a map which he spread on a bench. It was a map of Myrnidin, the third continent, the one entirely controlled by the Eldrin. With his dagger he stabbed at a spot I had seen indicated the night before. "Pafa-Na'al," he said. "While it is the logical point of an initial attack in a campaign of the sort we plan, it seems to me unlikely that the Eldrin will expect us to make so bold a move, knowing that we are weary and under strength." "But if we are weary and weak," I said, "would it not seem a good idea to attack some less important city first?" "You are forgetting, my lord, that our warriors have been heartened by your coming," Katorn said dryly. I could not help grinning at this cut, but Katorn scowled, angry that I had not taken offense. I said quietly, "We must learn to work together, my lord Katorn. I bow to your great experience as a warrior leader. I acknowledge that you have had much more recent knowledge of the Eldrin than I have. I need your help surely as much as King Reginos believes he needs mine." Katorn seemed slightly comforted by this. He cleared his throat and continued. "Once Pafa-Na'al, province and city, are taken, we shall have a beachhead from which other attacks inland can be made. With Pafa-Na'al again in our hands, we can decide our own strategy, initiate action rather than react to the Eldrin strategy. Only once we have pushed them back into the mountains will we have the wearying task of clearing them all out. It will take years, but it is what we should have done in the first place. That, however, will be a matter for ordinary military administration, and will not concern us directly." "And what kind of defenses has Paphanaal? I asked. Katorn smiled. She relies almost entirely on her warships. If we can destroy her fleet, then Paphanaal is as good as taken. He bared his teeth in what I gathered was a grin, and he looked at me, his expression changing to one of sudden suspicion, as if he had revealed too much to me. I could not ignore the expression. "What is on your mind, Lord Katorn?" I asked. "Do you not trust me?" He controlled his features. "I must trust you," he said flatly. "We all must trust you, Lord Erekose. Have you not returned to fulfill your ancient promise?" I gazed searchingly into his face. "Do you believe that?" "I must believe it." "Do you believe that I am Erekose the champion returned?" "I must believe that also." "You believe it because you surmise that, if I am not Erekose, the Erekose of the legends, then humanity is doomed?" He lowered his head, as if in assent. "And what if I am not Erekose, my lord?" Katorn looked up. "You must be Erekose, my lord. If it were not for one thing, I would suspect." "What would you suspect?" "Nothing." "You would suspect that I were an elder in disguise. Is that it, Lord Katorn? Some cunning unhuman who had assumed the outer appearance of a man. Do I read your thoughts correctly, my lord?" "Too correctly." Katorn's thick brows came together, and his mouth was thin and white. The Eldrin are said to have the power to probe minds, but human beings do not possess that power. "And are you, then, afraid, Lord Katorn?" "Of an Eldrin? By the good one, I'll show you!" And Katorn's heavy hand rushed to the hilt of his sword. I raised my own hand and then pointed at the sword that hung sheathed on the peg on the wall. "But that is the one fact that does not fit your theory, isn't it? If I am not Erekose, then how is it that I can handle Erekose's blade?" He did not draw his sword, but his grip remained on the hilt. "It is true, is it not, that no living creature, human or Eldrin, can touch that blade and live?" I said quietly. "That is the legend," he agreed. "Legend? I've never seen an Eldrin try to handle the sword Kanajana. But you must assume that it is true. Otherwise there's little hope for humanity." The words were dragged from his lips. "Very well, Lord Katorn. You will assume that I am Erekose, summoned by King Reginos to lead humanity to victory." "I have no choice but to assume that." "Good. And there is something that I, too, must assume for my part, Lord Katorn." "You? What?" "I must assume that you will work with me in this enterprise, that there will be no plots behind my back, that there will be no information withheld from me that might prove vital. They will not seek to make allies against me within our own ranks. You see, Lord Katorn, it could be your suspicions that might wreck our plans. A man jealous and resentful of his leader is capable of doing more harm than any enemy." He nodded his head and strained his shoulders, the hand falling away from his sword. "I'd considered that question, my lord. I am not a fool." "I know you are not a fool, Lord Katorn. If you were a fool, I should not have bothered to have had this conversation." His tongue bulged in his cheek as he mulled over this statement. Eventually he said, "And you are not a fool, Lord Erekose." "Thank you. I did not suspect that you judged me that." He removed his helmet and ran his fingers through his thick hair. He was still thinking. I waited for him to say something further, but then he replaced his helmet firmly on his head, dug his thumb into the side of his mouth, and picked at a tooth with the nail. He withdrew the thumb and stared at it intently for a moment. Then he looked at the map and murmured, "Well, at least we have an understanding. With that, it will be easier to fight this stinking war." I nodded. "Much easier, I think." He sniffed. "How good is our own fleet?" I asked him. "It's a fine fleet still, not as large as it was, but we are remedying that, too. Our shipyards work night and day to build more and larger men of war, and in our ironworks up and down the land we forge powerful guns with which to arm those ships." "And what of men to crew them?" "We're recruiting all we can. Even women are used in certain tasks. And boys. You were told that, Lord Erekose, and it was true. The whole of humanity fights the Eldrin warriors. I said nothing, but I had begun to admire the spirit of these people. I was less divided in my mind concerning the rights or wrongs of what I did. The folk of this strange time and place in which I found myself were fighting for nothing more nor less than the survival of their species. But then another thought came to me. Could not the same be said of the Eldrin? I dismissed the thought. At least Katorn and I had that in common. We refused to concern ourselves with speculation on moral and sentimental issues. We had a task to perform. We had assumed the responsibility for that task. We should do it to the best of our ability.